One of the most controversial figures in professional wrestling and All Elite Wrestling is set to make his return on June 17th at the United Center in Chicago, Illinois, for the debut of AEW's new Saturday weekly television show in AEW Collision. And that man is the former AEW World Champion, the former WWE World Champion, multiple-time WWE World Champion, I should say, in the Second City Saint, the straight edge CM Punk. Punk's time in AEW kicked off with his return match at AEW All Out 2021, where he would return to pro wrestling for the first time since 2014, and take on a man who he saw a lot of himself in, a daredevil, a risk taker, and one of the most interesting and entertaining aspects of AEW television, encompassing a quarter of the four pillars of AEW, in Darby Allin. Darby Allin alongside Sting would take on CM Punk, and Punk would show that he never lost what he originally had, and that the ring was still his home even after so many years away. Punk would reverse a move from Darby Allin and reverse it into his GTS finishing move, and Darby Allin would go to sleep in Chicago, Illinois, and Punk would get a victory in his return to the ring. After this, Punk would move to a brief feud, but a feud that feels like it's not done yet, with the now new AEW World Champion in MJF, or Maxwell Jacob Friedman. Just as Punk said about Allin, he saw a lot of similarities between himself and MJF. However, when MJF would extend his hand to CM Punk inside the ring during a promo, Punk would neglect it and walk out of the ring, not giving MJF the respect that he himself believed he deserved, being another portion of the pillars of AEW. Now, do I think it's important that these men who are the pillars of AEW, in Jungle Boy Jack Perry, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, Darby Allin, and Sammy Guevara, refer to themselves as such? I feel like these four men being the pillars of AEW is something that's written in the stars and something that's written behind the scenes, and something that doesn't have to be brought to the forefront on weekly television and used in a storyline perspective as it was used in the main event of AEW Double or Nothing. But that's besides the point. After a brief feud and victory over Eddie Kingston, Punk and MJF would kick off a feud that would have AEW fans all around the world talking. It was a man who people saw a young CM Punk in. Not the CM Punk in the WWE, not the straight-edge savior CM Punk, but the Ring of Honor misfit and the former ROH World Champion, encompassing his original run in the Summer of Punk in Ring of Honor. And Punk believes that he had to go back to his roots in order to defeat a man like MJF. A man who would stop at nothing to get a victory, and by hook or crook, get what he needed to get done. And that's why he's the AEW World Champion at the current point in time. The first match of the so-called feud would take place in CM Punk's hometown, and after using the Dynamite Diamond ring after a distraction from his henchman in Wardlow, MJF would smash CM Punk over the head with the ring, knock him unconscious, and get a 1-2-3 victory, still remaining unpinned in All Elite Wrestling. And shockingly, getting the one-up on a multiple-time world champion, and handing Punk his first loss in All Elite Wrestling. This would move us into AEW Revolution 2022, where CM Punk would again have to go back to his roots, go back to the original misfit, go back to the man who was going through Ring of Honor in the Summer of Punk, and go through a man who had his last moments in his professional career, in his words, take place before he stepped into the squared circle in WWE. And that would call back a feud with Raven from Ring of Honor, another legend of the professional wrestling business. And Punk would challenge MJF to a match where there was no chance he could run away. A match where both men would be chained to each other. And a match where by grit, determination, and all-out brutality, a winner would be crowned. And that was again a callback to the feud with Raven in Ring of Honor, as AEW would bring back for the second time the dog collar match. MJF versus CM Punk, AEW Revolution 2022. Punk would walk out sporting his gear from the independent scene and inside the Ring of Honor promotion, and he would even walk out to his original theme in Ring of Honor. MJF would walk out to the ring as well, and both men would be chained to each other. But this would just be the epilogue, in the professional wrestling opera that Friedman and Punk would write on this night. And after being turned on by Wardlow, CM Punk would use the same method of victory that MJF used in order to get the victory in their first match, by hitting MJF in the head with his Dynamite Diamond Ring and getting the victory on Friedman. At the end of the night, it would be CM Punk getting the one-up on MJF, and with both men's bloodshed, respect would be earned. But it feels as if the story wasn't finished. And now with Friedman as the AEW World Champion, with victories over the other three pillars of AEW and Bryan Danielson, it feels as if this Punk return could bring us back to a feud that has to continue. A feud between MJF and Punk. But let's get back on track and continue the chapter of the story we're currently on, with the return that not many people saw coming after the interactions between the Elite and CM Punk and Ace Steel. The return of CM Punk at AEW Collision. Following the feud with MJF, CM Punk would go to challenge for the richest prize in the game, or the richest prize in All Elite Wrestling, taking on the AEW World Champion in Hangman Adam Page at AEW Double or Nothing 2022. And to not many people's surprise, Punk would walk out as the new AEW World Champion. Now, with Punk as the World Champion and the man on top of the AEW promotion, the Elite did not take kindly to it, nor did the members of the roster in the back, because they felt as if Punk did not earn it, even with all of his accolades that were accrued before stepping into AEW. However, 5 days after winning the title at AEW Double or Nothing, CM Punk would make the announcement that he would have to vacate the title due to an injury, and he would have to step away to get surgery. During this time, a new interim AEW World Champion was crowned at the AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling co-branded show known as Forbidden Door. And this is where Jon Moxley would become the new interim AEW World Champion. Punk would then make his return to AEW on the August 10th edition of Dynamite known as Quake by the Lake, where he would confront the new interim AEW World Champion in Jon Moxley, setting up a match that would take place at the August 24th edition of Dynamite. And this is where Punk was shockingly squashed by Jon Moxley, proving to the fans and the fans behind the curtain that Punk had not recovered from his ankle and foot injury so quickly, and it ended CM Punk's title reign at just 86 days. Punk then would accept an open challenge by Moxley for the AEW World Championship, where the titles would be unified at AEW All Out 2022. In a match that many people believed Punk would most definitely lose because they felt as if he wasn't fully recovered from the injury that made him drop the title in the first place, shockingly, Punk would defeat Moxley and unify the titles to become the new AEW World Champion. But it wasn't the match at All Out that made the story worth telling today. It was the post-All Out media scrum, where Punk would reiterate that he works for a company full of children, and that he doesn't work for men who could solve their problems on their own. And he would go on to bash the man who was sitting right next to him and the president of AEW and Tony Khan, for the way that he runs a business, and in his words, he couldn't even manage a target. And the continuation of insults towards his former friend in Colt Cabana, and members of the Elite, including Hangman Adam Page, Kenny Omega, and the Young Bucks, would end a media scrum for the ages, and would change the foundation of AEW forever. After this media scrum, there would be a backstage altercation between Punk and the members of the Elite. And after the members of the Elite would try to harm CM Punk's dog, a backstage fisticuffs would go down, and the entire professional wrestling business would change. And within that change, we would not see CM Punk in professional wrestling or inside the All Elite Wrestling Squared Circle ever again. That is, of course, until his return, upcoming this month at AEW Collision. In summation, there's one thing that you cannot deny being a professional wrestling fan, either hardcore or casual. CM Punk brings eyes to the product. CM Punk is going to bring in ticket sales. And whether it's done under good graces or graces drowned in spite, there's one thing that the best in the world and the Second City Saint is for All Elite Wrestling. And that's best for business.